The blood spreading across his shirt told Clara Whitfield everything she needed to know about the cowboy's stubbornness, and it had nothing to do with medicine. He stood in the doorway of her small clinic on the edge of Copper Springs, Arizona territory, in the spring of 1882, swaying like a cottonwood in a high wind, one hand pressed against his ribs while his jaw remained set in that particular expression men wore when they refused to admit they needed help. "You planning to bleed out on my floor, or are you going to let me take a look at that wound?" Clara asked, not bothering to soften her tone as she wiped her hands on her apron. The cowboy's eyes, green as new grass after a desert rain, narrowed at her. "I came for whiskey, not for poking and prodding. The saloon is 3 buildings down. This is a clinic." Clara crossed her arms over her chest, taking in the full measure of the man before her. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with sun-darkened skin and dark brown hair that needed cutting. Dust covered his clothes, and beneath the grime and blood, she could see he wore the typical garb of a working ranch hand: worn denim pants, a cotton shirt that had once been blue, and boots that had seen better days. "Though, judging by the amount of blood you were losing, you will not make it that far." He grimaced, and for a moment Clara thought he might actually turn around and leave. Men in Copper Springs had a complicated relationship with her clinic. She had arrived in town 2 years ago with her medical knowledge, her determination, and very little else. The town's only doctor, a pompous man named Eldridge who had earned his credentials from a questionable institution back east, had made it clear that a woman had no place practicing medicine. But Clara had learned from her father, a skilled physician in Philadelphia who had believed that healing was a calling that had nothing to do with gender. When he died, she had headed west, looking for a place where people needed help badly enough that they might overlook her being a woman. Copper Springs had been that place, though it had taken time. The Mexican families who lived on the outskirts of town had come to her first, trusting her gentler touch and willingness to listen. Then the Chinese laborers from the nearby mine. Slowly, others followed. She had proven herself with broken bones set straight, fevers broken, infections prevented. Dr. Eldridge still scoffed, but more and more people walked past his office to reach her door. This cowboy, however, looked like he would rather crawl through broken glass than admit he needed her help. "Look," he said, his voice rough with pain, "I just need something to clean it and maybe some bandages. I can take care of it myself." Clara moved closer, her trained eye assessing the wound even from a distance. The blood had soaked through his shirt across his left side, and from the way he held himself, she suspected broken or cracked ribs in addition to whatever had torn his flesh. "What happened?" "Got thrown into a fence post, broke off, caught me on the way down." "When?" He hesitated. "This morning." Clara felt anger flash through her, hot and bright. "This morning? That was 6 hours ago. You have been walking around with this wound for 6 hours?" She did not wait for his answer, just grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the examination table that dominated the center of her small clinic. To her surprise, he followed, though she suspected that had more to do with his weakening state than any sudden cooperation. "Sit," she commanded, pointing at the table. "I can stand." "Sit, or I will knock you over myself. You are about 10 seconds from passing out." Something in her tone must have convinced him, because he lowered himself onto the table with a barely suppressed groan. Up close, she could see the fine tremor in his hands, the pale cast beneath his tan, the sweat beading his forehead despite the mild temperature. Shock was setting in, and if she did not work fast, he would be in serious trouble. Clara moved with practiced efficiency, gathering her supplies: clean water, carbolic acid for disinfection, her surgical scissors, needle and catgut thread, clean bandages. She had learned early in her Western practice to keep everything ready. Emergencies did not wait for preparation. "I need to cut away your shirt," she said, returning to his side with her scissors. His hand shot out, catching her wrist. His grip was still strong despite his condition. "These are my only good work clothes." Clara met his eyes steadily. "Then, you should not have waited 6 hours with a serious wound. The shirt is already ruined. Let me work or leave and take your chances with infection and death." They stared at each other for a long moment, a battle of wills that Clara had no intention of losing. Finally, his hand dropped away. She cut away the shirt quickly, revealing the damage beneath. It was worse than she had feared. The fence post had gouged a deep laceration across his ribs. the wound angry and already showing signs of dirt contamination. The ribs themselves appeared intact, which was fortunate, but the gash was easily 6 inches long and would require careful stitching. "What is your name?" Clara asked as she began cleaning the wound, her touch as gentle as she could make it, while still being thorough. "Cole!" he ground out between clenched teeth. "Cole Harrison. I am Clara Whitfield. This is going to hurt, Cole Harrison, but if you can stay still, I will work as quickly as I can. Just get it done." Clara had sutured dozens of wounds since coming to Copper Springs, but she never grew casual about the intimacy of the work. She was touching this man's bare skin, seeing his body in a way that would be considered scandalous in polite society. But there was nothing remotely romantic about the clinical focus required to close a wound properly. Her world narrowed to the needle, the thread, the precise placement of each stitch. Cole stayed remarkably still, though she could feel the tension in his body, see the white-knuckle grip he had on the edge of the table. Most men would have been cursing or crying out. He remained silent, except for his harsh breathing. "You work at one of the ranches?" Clara asked, partly to distract him, partly because she was curious. She knew most of the families in the area, at least by reputation. "The Triple Bar, about 8 miles north of town. That is Marcus Brennan's spread." "Yeah?" He paused, then added, "I am the foreman there." That surprised her. Ranch foremen were typically older, more experienced men. Cole could not be much past his mid-20s. "You must be good at what you do." "I know cattle, and I know horses. Been working ranches since I was 14. Clara tied off another stitch, checking her work. The wound was closing neatly, no signs of torn tissue that would not heal properly. "Where are you from originally?" "Texas. Came to Arizona 5 years ago, looking for work." "Family?" "Not anymore." His tone made it clear that topic was closed. Clara respected that, focusing instead on her work. She had her own painful history she preferred not to discuss. They worked in silence for several more minutes while she completed the stitches, cleaned the area once more with carbolic acid, and began wrapping his ribs with long strips of clean cotton bandage. "You need to keep this clean and dry," she instructed as she worked. "Change the bandages every day. I will give you extra supplies and a bottle of carbolic solution. If you see any redness, heat, or red streaks extending from the wound, you come back immediately. That would mean infection, and it can kill you faster than you would believe." "I know about infection." "Then you know I am serious. Also no heavy lifting for at least 2 weeks. Those stitches need time to hold." Cole's laugh was bitter. "I am a ranch foreman. Everything I do is heavy lifting." "Then you need to tell Mr. Brennan that you are injured and require light duty." Clara finished the bandaging and stepped back, surveying her work. "Or you can tear these stitches, bleed again, and possibly die of infection. Your choice." "You do not mince words, do you?" "I find that honesty is more effective than coddling when it comes to stubborn men who wait 6 hours to seek treatment for serious wounds." Clara began cleaning her instruments, her movements brisk and efficient. "The charge is $2. Cole slowly stood, testing his balance. Some color had returned to his face now that the wound was closed and bandaged. "That is less than Eldridge charges. Dr. Eldridge has fancier furniture and a degree from a medical school that I do not believe actually exists. I have knowledge, skill, and reasonable prices." Clara dried her hands and turned to face him. "Plus, I actually know what I'm doing." A smile flickered across Cole's face, the first sign of anything other than pain or stubbornness she had seen from him. It transformed his features, making him suddenly, dangerously handsome. Clara felt an unexpected flutter in her chest and immediately pushed it away. She did not have time for such foolishness, and certainly not with a patient. Cole reached for his pocket, winced, and she took pity on him. "I will get your money. Where is it?" "Front left pocket." Clara extracted $2 silver, trying not to think about the impropriety of reaching into a man's pocket, even for payment. This was medicine, nothing more. She had touched every part of the human body in her practice and never felt awkward about it before. There was no reason to start now. "Come back in 3 days so I can check the stitches," she said, all business once more. "Earlier, if you have any problems." "I will be fine. Cole Harrison, I just spent 45 minutes sewing you back together. You will come back so I can ensure my work was not wasted. Or I will ride out to the Triple Bar myself and inform Mr. Brennan that his foreman is being dangerously foolish." Cole studied her with those sharp green eyes, and Clara had the distinct impression she was being measured in some way. "You would really ride 8 miles just to check on a stubborn cowboy?" I have ridden farther for less cooperative patients. It was true. She had traveled to homesteads and mining camps, had treated people in conditions that would have horrified her father's colleagues back east. Distance did not frighten her, and neither did stubborn men. 3 days, Cole agreed finally. "I will be here." He started toward the door, moving carefully, and Clara called after him, "Do you have a clean shirt, or do you need to borrow one?" Cole looked down at the ruins of his clothing, seeming to notice for the first time that he was half-dressed. "I have a spare at the ranch. It is 8 miles in the sun. You should cover that bandaging." Clara moved to a wooden chest in the corner and pulled out a man's work shirt, faded but clean. It had belonged to a miner who had died of pneumonia last winter, leaving no family and few possessions. She had kept the clothes for emergencies. "Take this." Cole accepted the shirt, his fingers brushing hers briefly. "Thank you. It is practical, not charity. I do not want you getting sunburned on top of everything else." But her words came out softer than she intended, and when Cole smiled again, she felt that flutter return, stronger this time. After he left, Clara stood in her clinic, looking at the bloody rags that had been his shirt, the pink-tinged water she had used to clean his wound. She told herself the feeling in her chest was simple satisfaction at a job well done, at another patient treated successfully. She told herself that Cole Harrison was just another cowboy in a town full of them, that his green eyes and quiet strength meant nothing. She told herself a lot of things, but as she cleaned her clinic and prepared for the next patient, she caught herself wondering if he would really return in 3 days, and hoping that he would. The next 3 days passed slowly. Clara treated the usual array of ailments: a child's fever, a rancher's infected tooth, a woman's difficult pregnancy that required bed rest and careful monitoring. She made her rounds to the outlying families, checking on patients who could not come to town. She ordered more supplies from the traveling pharmaceutical salesman who passed through once a month. She argued with the dry goods store owner about the cost of cotton bandaging, eventually wearing him down to a reasonable price. She did not think about Cole Harrison at all, except when she did, which was far too often. On the morning of the 3rd day, Clara found herself glancing at the door more frequently than necessary. She told herself she was simply concerned from a medical standpoint. Infection could set in quickly, and despite his apparent toughness, Cole could be suffering complications. It had nothing to do with the way his eyes had captured hers, or the unexpected gentleness she had sensed beneath his rough exterior. The morning passed, then early afternoon. Clara began to think he would not come after all. Men often ignored medical advice, thinking they knew better than the person who had just saved their life. She was preparing to close up for a few hours to visit a pregnant woman on the east side of town when the door opened. Cole stepped inside, and Clara felt relief flood through her, quickly followed by professional concern. He looked better than he had 3 days ago, more color in his face, moving more easily. But there was something in his expression she could not quite read. "How is the wound?" Clara asked, gesturing for him to sit on the examination table. "Healing, I think. Does not hurt as much." Cole sat down, beginning to unbutton the shirt he wore. Clara washed her hands thoroughly and moved closer as he removed the shirt, revealing her bandaging work still in place. "Have you been changing the bandages?" "Every day, like you said, and using that carbolic solution, though it burns like hellfire." "That burning means it is working." Clara carefully unwrapped the bandages, pleased to see they were clean and properly applied. He had followed her instructions precisely. When she revealed the wound itself, she felt genuine satisfaction. The stitches were holding beautifully, no signs of infection, the edges already beginning to knit together. "This is excellent. You have been taking care of it properly." "I know how to follow orders when they make sense." Cole watched her examine his side, his gaze steady and intent. Clara tried to ignore how aware she was of his presence, of the warmth of his skin under her fingertips, as she gently probed the area around the wound. This was medicine, she reminded herself firmly. Nothing more. "No heavy lifting?" she asked. "I have been sticking to paperwork and light supervision. Brennan was not happy about it, but I told him I would be useless if I tore myself open and died." "Smart man." Clara began rewrapping his ribs with fresh bandages. "You can start doing more in another week, but build up gradually. Listen to your body. If something hurts, stop doing it. You make it sound simple. It is simple. Men just make it complicated by ignoring common sense. Clara tied off the bandage and stepped back. There, you are healing well. Come back in another week and I will remove the stitches. Cole stood, but made no move toward his shirt. Clara, can I ask you something? The use of her first name startled her, intimate and unexpected. What is it? Why did you come to Copper Springs? A woman with your skill could have stayed back east, worked with an established doctor, had an easier life. Clara considered deflecting, keeping the professional distance she maintained with all her patience. But something in Cole's expression, an openness that had not been there before, made her answer honestly. I came west because back east, no one would take me seriously. My father taught me medicine because he believed healing was more important than convention. But after he died, every hospital, every established practice turned me away. They said women were too delicate for medical work, too emotional to make difficult decisions. I knew that was nonsense, but I could not make them see it. So you came somewhere that needed a healer more than they needed prejudice. Exactly. Clara felt something shift between them, a recognition that went deeper than patient and healer. What about you? What brought you from Texas to Arizona? Cole was quiet for a long moment, and Clara thought he might not answer. Then he said, I needed to leave. There was a woman, or I thought there was. Turned out she wanted the ranch owner's son, not the hired hand. I was young and stupid enough to think love mattered more than money. He shrugged, the movement stiff from his healing wound. I learned better. That is a hard way to learn. Most good lessons are. Cole reached for his shirt, pulling it on carefully. But I am glad I came here. The Triple Bar is good land, Brennan is fair, and I have built something for myself. I have savings, plans, maybe my own spread someday. Clara heard the pride in his voice, the determination, and respected it. She understood about building something from nothing, about proving yourself in a place that did not think you belonged. Cole finished buttoning his shirt and pulled out his wallet. What do I owe you? 50 cents for the bandages and follow-up. He handed her $1. Keep it. You gave me a shirt last time. That shirt was not worth 50 cents. Maybe not, but your skill is worth more than you charge. Cole moved toward the door, then paused. Clara, would you have dinner with me? Not as patient and healer, just as two people who might want to know each other better. Clara's heart jumped, a sensation both thrilling and terrifying. She had not expected this, had not allowed herself to hope for it. Cole, I am not sure that is appropriate. You are my patient. My wound is healing fine. You said so yourself. In a week, you will take out the stitches and I will not be your patient anymore. He smiled, that transforming expression that made her pulse quicken. I am not asking for tonight. I am asking for next week, after you have decided I am recovered. Clara knew she should say no. Relationships were complicated, distracting. She had her practice to build, her reputation to maintain. Getting involved with a cowboy, even a handsome, surprisingly thoughtful one, could only lead to complications. But when she looked at Cole, she saw someone who understood about fighting for what you wanted, about building a life through sheer determination. She saw kindness in his eyes, respect in the way he spoke to her, and she realized that she had been so focused on her practice, on proving herself, that she had forgotten to actually live. Yes, she said, the word escaping before she could reconsider. Next week, after I remove your stitches. I would like that. Cole's smile widened into a grin that made him look younger, less guarded. There is a new restaurant that opened up by the hotel, Mrs. Chen's place. I hear the food is excellent. I have treated Mrs. Chen's children. The food is wonderful. Clara felt herself smiling back, a lightness in her chest she had not experienced in months. Next week, then. After Cole left, Clara stood in her clinic, pressing her hands to her cheeks, feeling the heat there. She was blushing like a schoolgirl, which was ridiculous. She was 26 years old, a skilled practitioner of medicine, a woman who had faced down drunken miners and difficult births without flinching. But the prospect of dinner with Cole Harrison had her flustered in a way nothing else could. The week that followed felt interminably long and impossibly short at the same time. Clara went about her usual work, but found her thoughts drifting to Cole at unexpected moments. She wondered what they would talk about over dinner, whether the easy conversation they had found in her clinic would translate outside of it. She wondered if she was making a mistake, letting herself care about someone when her life was already so complicated. On the appointed day, Cole arrived at her clinic precisely on time. He wore clean clothes, his hair neatly trimmed, his boots polished. Clara felt her heart do that foolish fluttering thing again as he smiled at her. "Ready for those stitches to come out?" she asked, gesturing to the examination table. "Looking forward to it. The itching is driving me crazy." "That is a good sign. It means you are healing." Clara gathered her instruments, including her small, sharp scissors designed specifically for stitch removal. Cole removed his shirt, revealing the healing wound. The stitches had done their job perfectly, the flesh knit together in a clean line that would leave only a faint scar. "This looks perfect," Clara said, unable to keep the satisfaction from her voice. "You took excellent care of it." "I had a good teacher." Clara began removing the stitches with practiced care, each snip and pull precise and gentle. Cole barely flinched, though she knew from experience that the process was uncomfortable. When she finished, she cleaned the area one final time and stepped back. "There, you are officially healed. No more restrictions, though I would still avoid knife fights and broken fence posts if possible." Cole laughed, a rich, warm sound that filled the small clinic. "I will do my best." He stood and pulled on his shirt. "So, are you still willing to have dinner with a former patient?" "I believe I am." Clara removed her apron and reached for her shawl. It was early evening, the spring air cooling as the sun began its descent. Perfect weather for walking to the restaurant. They stepped out into the street, and Clara felt the eyes of Copper Springs on them immediately. Mrs. Henderson, the banker's wife, paused in her shopping to stare. Tom Wright, who ran the livery stable, grinned and tipped his hat with exaggerated courtesy. By tomorrow morning, the entire town would know that Clara Whitfield had been seen walking to dinner with Cole Harrison. Clara lifted her chin and ignored the stares. She had faced down worse than small-town gossip. Mrs. Chen's restaurant was a small establishment tucked between the hotel and the land office, marked by a hand-painted sign in both English and Chinese characters. The interior was simple but spotlessly clean, with 6 tables covered in cheerful red cloth. Mrs. Chen herself greeted them, her round face breaking into a smile when she saw Clara. "Miss Whitfield, you come to eat, yes? And bring handsome man." She gestured them toward a table by the window. "You sit, I bring best food. You trust Mrs. Chen." Clara had learned that trusting Mrs. Chen was always the right choice. Within minutes, the table was covered with steaming dishes. Savory dumplings, stir-fried vegetables, tender pork in a rich sauce, perfectly cooked rice. The aromas alone were intoxicating. "This is incredible," Cole said after his first bite. "How did she end up in Copper Springs?" "Her husband worked the mines. He died in a cave-in 3 years ago, leaving her with 3 children and no money. She started cooking for the other Chinese workers, then expanded. Now half the town eats here when they can afford it." Clara took a bite of a dumpling, savoring the complex flavors. "She asked me once why I helped her family when they could not always pay. I told her that healing is not about money. The next day she showed up at my clinic with enough food for a week and told me we were friends now. You have made a real place for yourself here." Cole's voice held admiration. "That is not easy for anyone, let alone a woman in a profession like yours." "It has not been easy," Clara admitted. "Dr. Eldridge still tries to undermine me. He tells people I am dangerous, that women cannot understand the complexities of medicine. Some people listen to him, but most people care more about results than credentials. I deliver babies safely, I set bones straight, I treat infections before they turn deadly. That speaks louder than Eldridge's degree from his questionable medical school. How did you learn so much? You said your father taught you?" Clara nodded, the familiar ache of loss settling in her chest. "He was a brilliant physician, truly dedicated to healing. My mother died when I was young, and he raised me in his practice. At first he just let me watch, but I was fascinated. I wanted to understand everything. By the time I was 12, I was helping him. By 16, I was assisting with surgeries. He taught me everything he knew, not because he thought I would become a physician, but because he believed knowledge was never wasted. He sounds like a remarkable man." "He was. When he died 2 years ago, I realized I had 2 choices. Find a husband who would support me while I pretended to be a proper lady, or use what I knew to build a life on my own terms." Clara met Cole's eyes across the table. "I chose the harder path, but it is mine. I understand that." Cole leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "When I left Texas, I had nothing but my horse, my saddle, and my pride. The pride was not worth much, but it kept me moving. I worked every ranch job there was, breaking horses, mending fences, herding cattle across deserts. I saved every penny, learned everything I could. When the foreman position opened up at the Triple Bar, Brennan took a chance on me even though I was young. I have been proving that choice right ever since. What are your plans? You mentioned wanting your own ranch someday. Cole's face lit with enthusiasm, and Clara found herself captivated by his passion. There is a stretch of land about 20 miles north of here. Good water, decent grazing. It is not claimed yet. I am close to having enough for a down payment and starter herd. Another 2 years, maybe 3, and I can make my move. That is ambitious. Everything worth doing is ambitious. Cole smiled at her. Like a woman becoming a doctor in the Wild West. They talked through the rest of dinner, the conversation flowing easily between them. Cole told her stories about life on the ranch. The ornery bull that had chased him up a tree, the time the entire herd decided to stampede toward a cliff, and they had to turn them at the last second, the quiet satisfaction of seeing calves born healthy in the spring. Clara shared her own stories. The miner's wife who had been in labor for 2 days, and everyone thought she would die, but Clara had managed to turn the baby and deliver it safely. The child with scarlet fever who had recovered against all odds. The time she had to extract a tooth from a man who was terrified of her instruments, and she had ended up singing him a lullaby her father used to sing to her. You sang to him? Cole asked, laughing. It worked! He was so surprised he forgot to be afraid. And I got the tooth out cleanly. Clara grinned. Sometimes medicine is more about psychology than physiology. When they finally left the restaurant, the moon had risen, casting silver light over the dusty streets of Copper Springs. Cole offered his arm, and after a moment's hesitation, Clara took it. They walked slowly toward her clinic, neither seeming eager for the evening to end. Can I see you again? Cole asked as they reached her door. Not for medical reasons, just because I enjoy your company. Clara knew this was a turning point. She could step back, maintain her professional distance, focus solely on her practice, or she could take a risk on something that made her heart race and her usually logical mind turn to mush. Yes, she said, I would like that very much. Cole smiled, then surprised her by taking her hand and lifting it to his lips, a gesture both old-fashioned and intimate. Thank you for tonight, Clara, for the healing and the conversation both. Then he was walking away into the moonlight, and Clara was left standing at her door, her hand tingling where his lips had touched it, wondering what exactly she had just gotten herself into. Over the following weeks, Cole found reasons to come to town more frequently. Sometimes he had legitimate business, supplies to pick up, reports to file with the land office. But often he simply appeared at Clara's clinic around closing time, offering to walk her home or to dinner. Clara found herself looking forward to those visits with an intensity that would have alarmed her practical nature if she had stopped to think about it too carefully. They fell into a pattern. Cole would arrive, they would talk while Clara finished her work. Then they would walk through town together. Sometimes they ate at Mrs. Chen's restaurant. Other times they simply strolled, talking about everything and nothing. Cole proved to be surprisingly well-read despite his rough exterior, and they argued amicably about books they had both read. Clara discovered she loved making him laugh, loved the way his whole face changed when he was happy. You are different from anyone I have ever known, Cole told her one evening as they sat on the bench outside her clinic, watching the sunset paint the desert sky in shades of orange and purple. Most women I meet want to talk about dances and dresses and who is courting who. You want to discuss the best way to treat pneumonia and whether the railroads will ruin or save the territory. Is that a complaint? Clara asked, though she was smiling. Not even a little bit. It is refreshing. Cole shifted closer on the bench, his shoulder touching hers. Though, I have to admit, I like when you tell me about other things too. Like how you wanted to be a dancer when you were little, before you fell in love with medicine. Clara laughed at the memory. I was terrible at dancing, no rhythm whatsoever. My father tried to send me to lessons and the instructor gave up after 3 sessions. Said I was a hopeless case. I do not believe that. Show me. What? Now? Here? Why not? Cole stood and offered his hand, his eyes full of mischief. No music, no one watching. Just show me this terrible dancing you claim to do. Clara knew she should refuse. It was undignified, childish. but Cole's hand was extended, and his smile was irresistible, and she realized she wanted to be the kind of person who could be silly sometimes, who did not always have to be serious and professional. She took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. He hummed a waltz, off-key and imperfect, and they began to move. Clara had not danced in years, and she was indeed not very good at it. She stepped on Cole's feet twice, lost the rhythm entirely, and finally dissolved into laughter against his chest. "You are right," Cole said, his arms steady around her. "You are a terrible dancer. I warned you. I do not care." He pulled back slightly so he could see her face, and something in his expression made Clara's breath catch. "Clara, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I am falling in love with you." The words were simple, honest, without flourish or poetry. "I did not plan to. I came to town that day needing medical help, not expecting to find someone who would turn my whole world sideways. But you did. You are smart and stubborn, and you do not take nonsense from anyone. You heal people not because it is easy or profitable, but because you genuinely care. And when I am with you, I feel like the best version of myself." Clara felt tears prick her eyes, surprising her. She was not a woman given to crying, but the sincerity in Cole's voice, the vulnerability in his face, touched something deep inside her. "Cole, You do not have to say anything back," he interrupted gently. "I just needed you to know. Whatever you feel or do not feel, I will respect it, but I could not keep it to myself any longer." Clara reached up and touched his face, feeling the rough stubble on his jaw, the warmth of his skin. "You beautiful fool," she said softly. "Did you really think I was spending all this time with you out of professional courtesy? I am falling in love with you too. I have been trying not to, because it is complicated and inconvenient and terrifying. But I am done fighting it." Cole's smile was like sunrise, bright and transforming. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle despite his calloused palms. "Can I kiss you? I would be disappointed if you did not." The kiss was soft at first, tentative, both of them learning the shape and taste of each other. Then Clara pressed closer, her hands sliding into Cole's hair, and the kiss deepened into something urgent and consuming. She felt like she was on fire, like every nerve in her body had suddenly awakened. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Clara felt fundamentally changed. "Well," she said, trying to catch her breath, "that was worth waiting for." Cole laughed, pulling her close again, tucking her head under his chin. They stood like that as the last light faded from the sky and the stars began to appear overhead. Clara listened to the steady beat of Cole's heart and thought about how strange life was. A few months ago, she had been alone, focused entirely on her work, convinced that was enough. Now she stood in a cowboy's arms and felt like she had finally come home. But as perfect as the moment was, Clara's practical nature reasserted itself. There were complications to consider, realities that could not be ignored. "Cole, we need to talk about what this means. It means we are together." He said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. "But you work on a ranch 8 miles from town. I have a practice here that I cannot leave. How do we make this work?" Cole pulled back to look at her, his expression serious now. "I will not lie and say it will be easy, but I come to town twice a week already. I can make it more often. And when I have days off, I will spend them here. And you could come out to the ranch sometimes. Brennan would not mind. His wife would probably love having another woman around. People will talk. They already whisper about me enough as it is. Let them talk. Clara, you have spent 2 years proving yourself in this town. Anyone who matters knows your worth. The rest are just gossips with nothing better to do." Cole took her hands in his. "I know this is not simple, but nothing worthwhile ever is. We will figure it out as we go." Clara wanted to believe him, and looking into his eyes, seeing the determination and hope there, she found that she did. "All right, we will try. That is all I ask." They kissed again, sealing the promise, and Clara felt the last of her resistance melt away. She was in love with a cowboy, and somehow, impossibly, he loved her back. It was reckless and wonderful and terrifying all at once. The next few months were among the happiest of Clara's life. True to his word, Cole came to town as often as he could. On the days he could not make it, he sent letters with the supply wagons, simple notes telling her about his day, or sharing something funny that had happened on the ranch. Clara treasured those letters, reading them over before she fell asleep. When she could spare the time, Clara rode out to the Triple Bar. The first time she made the journey, she was nervous about meeting Marcus Brennan and his wife. But Mrs. Brennan, a warm woman from Missouri with laugh lines around her eyes, welcomed Clara immediately. "Any woman who can handle Cole Harrison when he is injured must be something special," she said, hugging Clara like they were old friends. "That man is more stubborn than our prize bull." "I have noticed that tendency," Clara agreed, smiling. She visited several more times, and on one occasion she ended up treating a ranch hand who had been kicked by a horse. Word got around, and soon other ranches were sending for her when they had injuries or illnesses. Clara found herself with more work than ever, but she did not mind. Her reputation grew, and with it, her confidence that she had truly built something lasting in Copper Springs. Dr. Eldridge, of course, was not pleased by any of this. He made his displeasure known one afternoon when Clara was picking up supplies at the general store. She was examining bandage material when she heard his pompous voice behind her. "Miss Whitfield, still playing at medicine, I see." Clara turned to face him, keeping her expression neutral. "Doctor?" Eldridge was a portly man in his 50s, with thinning hair and a perpetually condescending expression. "Dr. Eldridge, how can I help you?" "You can help by ceasing your dangerous practice before you kill someone. You have no credentials, no proper training. It is only a matter of time before your ignorance costs a life." Clara felt anger flare, but kept her voice calm. "I have treated over 300 patients in the 2 years I have been in Copper Springs. I have not lost a single one who had a chance of survival. Can you say the same?" Eldridge's face flushed red. "How dare you question my competence? I have a degree from a medical school that does not appear in any legitimate registry," Clara interrupted. "I have checked. Meanwhile, my father graduated from the University of Pennsylvania Medical School, one of the finest in the country, and he taught me everything he learned there. So, please, do not lecture me about credentials. Your father's credentials are not yours. You are a woman, pretending to be something you can never be. She is a healer who has helped more people in this town than you ever will." Clara turned to see Cole standing behind her, his expression thunderous. He must have just arrived in town and come looking for her. The protective anger in his stance made her heart swell, even as she wished he had not gotten involved. "This is none of your concern, Harrison," Eldridge said dismissively. "When you insult the woman I love, it becomes my concern." Cole stepped forward until he was nearly toe-to-toe with the older man. "Now you will apologize to Clara, or you and I will have a different kind of conversation outside. Are you threatening me? I am giving you the chance to be a gentleman. Your choice." Clara put her hand on Cole's arm, feeling the tension in his muscles. "Cole, it is all right. Dr. Eldridge is entitled to his opinion. His opinion is insulting and wrong. Perhaps, but I do not need defending. My work speaks for itself." Clara turned back to Eldridge, meeting his eyes steadily. "I will continue practicing medicine as long as people need me. If you have a problem with that, you are welcome to take it up with the town council. But we both know what they will say, since they have consulted with me on several occasions and never with you." Eldridge sputtered, clearly wanting to continue the argument, but unable to find solid ground. Finally, he turned on his heel and stormed out of the store, leaving Clara and Cole standing by the bandages. "That man is a pompous fool," Cole said, still angry. "That man is scared," Clara corrected. "He has built his entire identity around being the town doctor. My presence threatens that. I almost feel sorry for him. You are too generous. I am practical. Getting angry at Eldridge would not change anything. Doing good work does." Clara squeezed his arm. "But thank you for defending me, even if it was unnecessary." Cole's expression softened. "I will always defend you, even when it is unnecessary." Clara stood on her toes and kissed his cheek, not caring that they were in a public place where anyone could see. "I know. That is one of the many reasons I love you." Summer arrived, bringing brutal heat to the desert. Clara's practice slowed slightly as people avoided travel during the hottest part of the day. She used the quieter time to organize her supplies, update her patient records, and read the medical journals that arrived by post. The world of medicine was advancing rapidly, and she was determined to keep current with new discoveries and techniques. It was on one of these quiet afternoons that a rider came thundering into town, his horse lathered and wild-eyed. Clara heard the commotion from her clinic and stepped outside to see the man, whom she recognized as one of the Triple Bar Ranch hands, jumping from his saddle. "Miss Whitfield, thank God. We need you at the ranch. There has been an accident." Clara's heart seized. "What happened? Is it Cole?" "No, ma'am. It is Mr. Brennan. His horse threw him, and he hit his head. He has not woken up, and Mrs. Brennan is beside herself." Relief that it was not Cole mixed with immediate concern for Marcus Brennan. The head injuries were always serious. "Give me 5 minutes to gather my supplies. Water your horse, but do not unsaddle him. I may need to borrow him if mine is not fast enough." Clara moved with practiced efficiency, packing her medical bag with everything she might need: bandages, carbolic acid, smelling salts, instruments for stitching if necessary. She kept a horse stabled behind her clinic for emergencies like this. Within minutes, she was mounted and following the ranch hand back toward the Triple Bar. The 8-mile ride seemed to take forever. Clara pushed her horse as fast as she dared in the heat, her mind running through possibilities. A head injury serious enough to render someone unconscious could mean skull fracture, brain swelling, bleeding, or it could be a simple concussion. She would not know until she examined him. They reached the ranch to find chaos. Ranch hands stood in worried groups outside the main house. "Mrs. Brennan met Clara at the door, her face streaked with tears. "Clara, thank God you are here. He is in our bedroom. He has been unconscious for over an hour, and I do not know what to do." Clara followed her inside, her professional calm settling over her like a familiar cloak. Cole was already there, standing by the bed where Marcus Brennan lay pale and still. His eyes met Clara's with relief and worry in equal measure. "He was checking the fence line near the canyon," Cole said, as Clara knelt beside the bed. "Horse must have seen a rattlesnake and reared. Marcus went off backward and hit his head on a rock." Clara examined Brennan carefully. His pulse was steady, but slow. His breathing was regular. She checked his pupils, which responded to light, though sluggishly. When she gently probed his skull, she found a massive lump on the back of his head, but no depression that would suggest a fracture. "Has he moved at all? Made any sounds?" Clara asked. "He moaned a few times when we first got to him," Cole said, "but nothing since we brought him back to the house." Clara pulled smelling salts from her bag and passed them under Brennan's nose. He jerked slightly, turning his head away, which was a good sign. She repeated the process, and this time his eyelids fluttered. "Mr. Brennan, Marcus, can you hear me? It is Clara Whitfield. You have had an accident, but you are home now. I need you to try to open your eyes." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, agonizingly, Brennan's eyes opened. They were unfocused at first, confusion evident in their depths. Then he blinked several times, and his gaze sharpened. What happened?" His voice was hoarse, confused. "Your horse threw you. You hit your head. Do you remember?" Brennan frowned, clearly trying to think. "I remember the fence line, and then nothing. That is normal with a head injury. Do you know where you are?" "Home. The ranch." His eyes found his wife's face. "Sarah, why are you crying?" "Because you scared me half to death, you foolish man," Mrs. Brennan said, but she was smiling through her tears as she took his hand. Clara continued her examination, asking questions to assess his mental state, checking his coordination and reflexes. Everything seemed intact, though he was clearly disoriented and in pain. "You have a serious concussion, Mr. Brennan. The good news is I do not believe your skull is fractured, and you are able to wake up and speak, which are both excellent signs. The bad news is you are going to have a terrible headache for several days, and you need complete rest." "I have a ranch to run," Brennan protested weakly. "The ranch will still be here when you recover. Cole can handle things for a few days. Cannot you, Cole?" "Already planned on it," Cole said firmly. "You just rest, Marcus. Everything is under control." Clara stayed at the ranch through the evening, monitoring Brennan's condition. She was concerned about bleeding in the brain, which could develop hours after the initial injury. But as time passed and Brennan remained stable, alert, and increasingly cranky about being bedridden, she felt confident that he would recover. Mrs. Brennan insisted Clara stay for dinner, and afterward, Clara and Cole walked out to the barn together, finally alone after the chaos of the day. "You were incredible," Cole said, pulling her into his arms. "The way you took control of the situation, examined him, knew exactly what to do. Everyone was panicking and you were completely calm. I was not calm inside. Head injuries terrify me. There is so much that can go wrong." Clara leaned against him, letting herself feel the fear she had pushed aside to work. But I could not let anyone see that. They needed confidence, not fear. That is what makes you a great healer. You can function even when you are scared. Cole kissed the top of her head. I was so glad you were there. I know ranch work and cattle and horses, but medical emergencies are beyond me. We all have our skills. Yours just happen to involve large animals and ropes. Clara smiled up at him. And stubbornly refusing medical treatment when you have serious injuries. That was before I knew the beautiful, brilliant woman who would treat me. Cole's expression grew serious. Clara, seeing what happened today made me think. Life is short and unpredictable. We do not know how much time we have. That is true. So I do not want to waste what time we do have. I want to spend it with you. I want to build a life together. Cole reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Clara Whitfield, will you marry me? Clara felt her heart stop, then start again at double speed. She looked at the box in his hand, then up at his face, seeing hope and love and a touch of nervousness in his expression. This was real. He was really asking her to marry him. Cole, She stopped, her mind racing. Marriage would change everything. She would be expected to give up her practice, to move to the ranch, to become a proper wife. She had built something in Copper Springs, proven herself. Could she really give that up? But looking at Cole, she realized the question was not whether she could give up her practice. The question was whether she trusted him to support it. Before I answer, I need to know something, Clara said carefully. If I marry you, what happens to my practice? To the clinic? Cole looked surprised by the question. It continues, of course. Why would you think otherwise? Because most men expect their wives to stay home, to focus on the house and children. My practice requires independence, irregular hours, sometimes dangerous travel. Are you really willing to accept that? Clara, I fell in love with you because of who you are, not despite it. Your healing is part of you. I would never ask you to give that up. Cole took her hands. I will not pretend it will be simple. We will have to figure out logistics, but we will figure them out together, as partners. Your work is important. People need you. I would never stand in the way of that. Clara felt tears well up, surprising her for the second time that evening. You really mean that? Every word. So will you? Will you marry me? Yes. The word came out half laughing, wished half crying. Yes, of course I will marry you. Cole opened the box, revealing a simple gold band set with a small but beautiful blue stone. It is not fancy, he said as he slid it onto her finger, but the stone is turquoise, mined right here in Arizona. I wanted something that came from this place that brought us together. It is perfect. Clara looked at the ring on her finger, then threw her arms around Cole's neck, kissing him with all the love and joy and relief that flooded through her. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and grinning, she said, My practical nature wants to plan everything carefully, but my heart says we should get married as soon as possible. I am listening to your heart on this one. How soon? A month? That gives me time to find someone to cover the clinic for a few days, to arrange things properly. A month is perfect. Cole kissed her again. Though I warn you, it is going to be the longest month of my life. They told the Brennans that evening. Despite his concussion, Marcus managed a broad smile and hearty congratulations. Sarah cried happy tears and immediately began planning, insisting she would help with everything. You are like family already, she said, hugging Clara tightly. Now it will be official. The ride back to Copper Springs the next morning felt different. Clara kept looking at the ring on her finger, still not quite believing this was real. She was engaged. She was going to marry Cole Harrison. The practical part of her brain was already working through all the details that would need to be handled, but the rest of her was simply happy, a deep, uncomplicated joy that she had not felt in years. News of the engagement spread through Copper Springs within hours of her return. Mrs. Chen appeared at the clinic with an enormous basket of food and declared herself in charge of the wedding feast. Mrs. Brennan rode into town with fabric samples for Clara's dress. Even some of the more conservative townsfolk who had been skeptical of Clara's practice seemed pleased by the news. A wedding was a reason to celebrate, and Copper Springs did not get many of those. The only person who was not happy was Dr. Eldridge. He made a point of telling anyone who would listen that Clara would surely give up her pretend practice now that she was becoming a wife. Clara ignored him. She had more important things to worry about. The month passed in a blur of preparation. Clara continued seeing patients while also planning a wedding. Cole came to town every few days, each visit feeling simultaneously too short and perfectly precious. They talked about their future, making plans. They decided Clara would keep her clinic in town, but spend weekends at the ranch when possible. Cole would continue as foreman for another year, saving the rest of the money they needed for their own land. They talked about children someday, about building a house of their own, about all the ordinary, extraordinary things that made up a life together. The wedding was set for a Saturday in early October, when the brutal heat had finally broken and the air held the first hints of autumn coolness. They would marry at the small church on the edge of town, with a celebration afterward at Mrs. Chen's restaurant. The night before the wedding, Clara lay awake in her small room above the clinic, too excited and nervous to sleep. She thought about her father, wishing desperately that he could be there to walk her down the aisle. He would have liked Cole, she thought, would have respected his work ethic and his willingness to support Clara's practice. She touched the locket around her neck, which held a small photograph of her parents, and whispered, "I wish you could be here, but I think you would be happy for me." The morning of the wedding dawned clear and beautiful, the sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. Sarah Brennan arrived early to help Clara dress, bringing with her a gown that took Clara's breath away. It was simple but elegant, cream-colored cotton with delicate embroidery at the collar and cuffs. "I made it for my own daughter's wedding someday," Sarah said, helping Clara into the dress. "But Marcus and I were never blessed with children. It would make me so happy to see you wear it." Clara hugged the older woman, too moved to speak. She had come to Arizona alone, with no family. But in the last 2 years, she had built something better than family by blood. She had found a community that accepted her, respected her, cared about her. When she looked at herself in the mirror, Clara barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked happy, radiant even. The worry lines between her brows had softened. Her eyes sparkled. She looked like a woman in love, and she supposed that was exactly what she was. The church was packed when they arrived. It seemed like half of Copper Springs had turned out for the wedding. Clara saw her patients, the miners and ranchers and shopkeepers she had treated, Mexican families and Chinese workers and everyone in between. They had all come to celebrate with her. And then she saw Cole, standing at the front of the church in his best clothes, his hair neatly combed, his eyes locked on her. The expression on his face as she walked down the aisle was something Clara knew she would remember for the rest of her life. He looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world, like he could not quite believe his good fortune, like he would spend every day of his life trying to be worthy of her. The ceremony itself passed in a blur. Clara heard herself say the vows, felt Cole slip another ring onto her finger to accompany her engagement band. Then the minister was pronouncing them husband and wife, and Cole was kissing her, and the church erupted in cheers and applause. The celebration afterward was everything Clara could have hoped for. Mrs. Chin had outdone herself, providing a feast that seemed to go on forever. There was music and dancing, and even though Clara was terrible at dancing, Cole led her through a waltz, and neither of them cared when she stepped on his feet. People gave speeches, some funny, some touching. Marcus Brennan, fully recovered from his concussion, toasted to the most stubborn cowboy and the most brilliant healer in Arizona, who were clearly made for each other. Mrs. Chen declared that their children would be beautiful and strong. Tom Wright from the livery stable made a joke about Clara finally healing the loneliness in Cole's heart that made everyone laugh and cry at the same time. As the sun set and the celebration showed no signs of slowing, Cole pulled Clara aside, into the quiet shadows behind the restaurant. "Happy?" he asked, his arms around her waist. "Happier than I knew I could be." Clara reached up and touched his face. "Thank you for finding me, for being stubborn enough to come back to my clinic even when you did not want to admit you needed help. Best decision I ever made." Cole kissed her softly. "I love you, Clara Harrison." "I love you too." The name felt strange and wonderful on her tongue. Clara Harrison. She was no longer just Clara Whitfield, the determined woman who had come west alone. She was part of something bigger now, part of a partnership that would face whatever came together. They stayed for another hour, accepting congratulations and well wishes, and then finally Cole said, "I think it is time we left." He had rented a room at the hotel for their wedding night, and Clara felt her heart race with anticipation and nervousness as they walked through the moonlit streets. The night that followed was tender and passionate, filled with discovery and laughter and love. Clara had medical knowledge of what happened between husband and wife, but knowing facts was different from experiencing the reality. Cole was gentle, patient, letting her set the pace, and when they finally came together completely, Clara felt like they had become something more than two separate people. They were truly partners now, in every sense of the word. They spent the next 3 days at the hotel, a brief honeymoon where they could focus entirely on each other. But on the 4th day, Clara returned to her clinic and Cole to the ranch. Life continued, but now they faced it together. The first months of marriage required adjustment. They had to negotiate time together, figure out how to maintain Clara's practice while also building their partnership. Some weeks Cole could come to town frequently. Other weeks, Clara rode out to the ranch to be with him. It was not always easy, but it worked because they both made it a priority. Clara discovered that being married changed how some people treated her. A few seemed to take her more seriously now that she had a husband. Others assumed she would soon be pregnant and would give up her practice. Clara ignored both groups and continued her work. 6 months after their wedding, Cole came to town with exciting news. "I found it," he said, bursting into the clinic with barely contained excitement. "The land I have been saving for. The owner is ready to sell, and I have enough for the down payment plus starter herd. Clara, we can have our own place." Clara felt excitement and trepidation in equal measure. Their own ranch meant Cole would no longer be working for the Brennans. It meant more responsibility, more risk. But it also meant building something that was truly theirs. "Where is the land?" she asked. "About 5 miles north of town. There is a good creek, decent grazing, and the prettiest view you ever saw. And Clara, there is a house already there. It needs work, but it is solid. We could make it home." 5 miles was much better than 8. Clara could reach town easily for her practice, but still have a real home with Cole. "Show me." They rode out that afternoon, and when Clara saw the land, she understood Cole's excitement. The house was small but sturdy, built of adobe with a covered porch. It sat on a rise overlooking a valley where the creek ran year-round. Mountains rose in the distance, purple against the blue sky. There was a barn, corrals, and even a small building that Cole said had been used for storage. "That building," Clara said, pointing. "It could be a clinic, a place for people who live far from town, who cannot make it all the way to Copper Springs. I could see patients here a few days a week." Cole's smile was brilliant. "I had the same thought, but did not want to suggest it in case you thought I was pushing. But yes, it would be perfect for that." They walked the property hand in hand, making plans. They would buy the land, move in by summer, start building their herd. Clara would maintain her clinic in town, but also establish this second location. They would have room for animals, for a garden, for the children they hoped would come someday. It took 3 months to finalize the purchase and make the necessary repairs to the house. The entire community seemed to pitch in. The Brennans donated several head of cattle to start their herd. Mrs. Chen helped Clara clean and furnish the house. Tom Wright found them a good milk cow. Even some of Clara's patients showed up to help fix the roof and reinforce the corrals. When they finally moved in, Clara stood on the porch of their home, looking out at their land, and felt a sense of completion she had not known she was missing. She had come west to build a practice, to prove herself as a healer. She had done that. But she had also found something she had not been looking for: love, partnership, a home that was truly hers. Cole came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking?" "That I am exactly where I am supposed to be. Me too." He turned her in his arms. "Thank you for taking a chance on a stubborn cowboy." "Thank you for letting me heal you," Clara smiled. "And I am not just talking about the wound in your side." They kissed as the sun set over their land, and Clara knew that this was just the beginning of their story together. The months that followed were busy, but fulfilling. Cole threw himself into ranching, working from dawn until dark to build up their herd and improve the property. Clara split her time between the clinic in Copper Springs and the new space she established on their ranch. Word spread quickly about the clinic closer to the northern ranches, and soon she had a steady stream of patients at both locations. They fell into a rhythm. Clara would ride into town 3 days a week to see patients at her original clinic. The other days she spent at the ranch, treating people who made the journey there. Cole worked the ranch, and in the evenings they would sit on their porch, talking about their days, making plans for the future. It was not always easy. Ranching was hard work, subject to the whims of weather and market prices. Medical practice in the frontier came with its own challenges. There were patients Clara could not save, situations that broke her heart. There were droughts that threatened their water supply, and harsh winters that tested their cattle. But they faced everything together, and that made all the difference. A year after they bought the ranch, Clara began to notice changes in her body. At first, she thought she was simply tired from the demands of running 2 clinics and helping with the ranch. But when she missed her monthly courses and felt nauseated in the mornings, she recognized the signs. She was pregnant. Clara did not tell Cole immediately. She wanted to be certain, and she wanted to find the right moment. But one evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Cole said, "You are going to tell me what is going on, or I am going to worry myself sick." Clara looked at him in surprise. "What do you mean? You have been acting different for weeks, tired, distracted. You barely touched dinner tonight, and you love Mrs. Chen's dumplings." Cole took her hand. "Are you sick? Is something wrong?" "Nothing is wrong." Clara smiled at the worry in his face. "Cole, I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." For a moment, Cole just stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then a huge grin spread across his face, and he let out a whoop of joy that probably carried all the way to Copper Springs. He picked Clara up and spun her around, then immediately set her down carefully. "Sorry, should I not have done that? Is spinning bad for the baby?" Clara laughed. "The baby is fine. I am fine. And spinning is perfectly acceptable at this stage." "A baby!" Cole's voice was full of wonder. "We are going to be parents." "Terrifying, is it not?" "Terrifying and wonderful." Cole placed his hand gently on her stomach, which was still flat. "When?" "I estimate about 7 months, early spring, if my calculations are correct." That night, lying in bed with Cole's arm around her and his hand resting protectively on her belly, Clara felt a contentment so deep it was almost overwhelming. She had everything she had never known she wanted: a husband she loved, a medical practice that fulfilled her, a home that was truly hers, and now a child on the way. The pregnancy was difficult at times. Morning sickness plagued her through the first months, and as her belly grew, she found it harder to move around the clinic comfortably. But Clara continued working almost until the end, determined to serve her patients for as long as she could. She trained a young woman named Sarah who was interested in nursing to help with the simpler cases, ensuring continuity of care. Cole was simultaneously protective and supportive. He wanted Clara to rest, but he understood her need to continue her work. He accompanied her on calls when he could, hovering anxiously until Clara would laugh and kiss him and tell him she was pregnant, not made of glass. Their son was born on a cool March morning in 1884. The labor was long and painful, and for the first time Clara understood completely what her patients went through. But when she finally held the squirming, red-faced infant in her arms, all the pain was forgotten. "He is perfect," Cole whispered, touching the baby's tiny hand with one finger. "What should we name him?" "I was thinking James, after my father," Clara said, "if that is all right with you. James Harrison, I like it." Cole kissed Clara's forehead. "You were so brave. I was terrified the whole time, but you were incredible." "I was terrified too," Clara admitted. "But he is worth it." Little James transformed their lives completely. Clara took a brief break from her practice to recover and bond with the baby, but within a month she was seeing patients again, though at a reduced schedule. Cole proved to be a devoted father, coming in from ranch work to hold his son, walking him at night when he cried, changing diapers without complaint. "I thought you would be one of those fathers who considers baby care women's work," Clara teased one evening, watching Cole expertly burp James. "I told you we were partners in everything. That includes this little fellow." Cole smiled down at his son. "Besides, I like taking care of him. Cattle are fine, but they do not smile when they see you, or grab your finger, and hold on like you are the most important thing in the world." As James grew from infant to toddler, Clara gradually returned to her full schedule. She brought the baby with her sometimes, setting up a small area in the clinic where he could play while she worked. Her patients loved seeing him, and more than once Clara had returned from examining someone in the back room to find James being cuddled by one of the Mexican grandmothers or entertained by a rancher making silly faces. Life settled into a new normal. The ranch prospered, and Cole's reputation as a skilled cattleman grew. Clara's medical practice remained busy at both locations. James grew healthy and strong, showing early signs of inheriting his mother's curiosity and his father's stubborn determination. 3 years after James was born, Clara found herself pregnant again. This time she recognized the signs immediately and told Cole right away. Their daughter, Elizabeth, was born in the summer of 1887. She had Clara's dark hair and Cole's green eyes, and from the moment she entered the world with a lusty cry, it was clear she would be a force to be reckoned with. With 2 young children, Clara had to make adjustments to her practice. She could not be available at all hours anymore. But she had trained Sarah well, and she brought in another assistant, a young man who had shown interest in medicine. Together, they provided coverage when Clara needed to be home with her children. "Do you ever regret it?" Cole asked one evening, after they had finally gotten both children to sleep. "Having to cut back your practice because of the children?" Clara considered the question seriously. "There are moments when I wish I could do more, help more people. But no, I do not regret it. My practice is still there. I am still healing people, teaching others to heal. But I also have this." She gestured around their home, where toys were scattered on the floor and the walls held children's drawings. "I have you and James and Elizabeth. I have built a life that is bigger than just my work. That is not a sacrifice. It is a choice, and it is the right one for me." Cole pulled her close. "You are an amazing woman, Clara Harrison." "I am a lucky woman. I found someone who lets me be everything I want to be." The years passed, each one bringing its own challenges and joys. James started school in Copper Springs, bright and eager to learn. Elizabeth proved to be a handful, full of energy and questions. The ranch continued to grow, and they added more land and cattle. Clara's practice evolved, and she found herself increasingly focused on training others, passing on the knowledge her father had given her. When James was 10 and Elizabeth was 7, Clara found herself pregnant once more. It was unexpected, as she had assumed her childbearing years were behind her. But she and Cole welcomed the news, even as they joked about starting over with a newborn at their age. Their youngest son, William, was born in the winter of 1894. He was a calm, quiet baby, so different from his energetic siblings. James and Elizabeth doted on him, taking turns holding their baby brother and helping care for him. "Our family is complete now," Cole said, watching Clara nurse William by the fire one evening while James did homework and Elizabeth played with her dolls nearby. "This is everything I never knew I wanted." Clara looked around at her family, at the life they had built together, and knew exactly what he meant. She had come to Arizona 12 years ago, alone and uncertain, knowing only that she wanted to practice medicine on her own terms. She had found that, and so much more. As the years continued, Clara watched her children grow. James showed an interest in ranching and would often ride out with Cole, learning the business. Elizabeth, to no one's surprise, declared she wanted to be a doctor like her mother. Clara began teaching her daughter the basics of medicine, just as her own father had taught her. William was still young, but he was showing signs of being a gentle, thoughtful child who loved books and animals. The ranch prospered beyond Cole's early dreams. They had expanded to nearly 1,000 acres, with a substantial herd that provided good income. Cole hired several hands to help with the work, becoming the kind of ranch owner he had once worked for. But he never forgot where he came from, treating his workers fairly and with respect. Clara's medical practice remained central to the community. She had trained several assistants over the years, creating a network of care that extended far beyond what one person could do alone. Dr. Eldridge had eventually left Copper Springs, unable to compete with Clara's skill and reputation. She was now universally recognized as the primary healer in the region, consulted on difficult cases by doctors from other towns. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Cole took Clara back to the spot where he had first shown her their land. They left the children with Sarah Brennan and rode out alone, something they rarely had time to do anymore. "Do you remember that day?" Cole asked, his arm around Clara as they stood on the rise overlooking their ranch. "When I brought you here and you immediately started planning how to turn the storage building into a clinic, I remember thinking you were crazy to take on this much responsibility. We barely had any money, the house needed so much work, and you wanted to start a ranch from scratch." Clara leaned into him. "I also remember thinking I would follow you anywhere, even into this beautiful, terrifying adventure. It has been quite an adventure." Cole turned to face her. 15 years. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that you were stitching up that wound in my side and telling me I was a stubborn fool. Other times, it feels like I have loved you my whole life. We have built something remarkable here. Not just the ranch or my practice, but a real family, a real life. And we are not done yet. James is talking about going to agricultural college. Elizabeth is determined to follow in your footsteps. William has his whole future ahead of him, and you and I still have years of ranching and healing and loving each other. Clara kissed him, long and deep, still feeling that flutter in her chest that she had felt the first time he smiled at her. To think, if you had not been stubborn enough to keep bleeding after getting thrown into that fence post, none of this would have happened. Best injury I ever had, Cole grinned. Though I hope you know I'm not planning to get hurt again just to get your attention. I think you have my attention pretty well captured at this point. They stayed on the rise until sunset, talking and dreaming about the future just as they had 15 years ago. The land stretched out before them, beautiful and harsh and full of possibility. Their home stood solid on the hill, smoke rising from the chimney where Sarah was no doubt making dinner for the children. In the distance, cattle grazed peacefully. Clara thought about the girl she had been when she first came west. Determined, lonely, fierce in her independence. That girl would barely recognize the woman she had become. She was still determined, still fierce when needed, but she was no longer lonely. She had found her place, her purpose, her people, and she had found love with a stubborn cowboy who had finally let her heal him, in more ways than either of them had expected. The years continued to unfold, bringing the changes that time always brings. James finished school and went to study agriculture and animal husbandry, returning home with new ideas about ranching that he and Cole would spend hours discussing. Elizabeth began her medical training under Clara's guidance, showing a natural aptitude that filled Clara with pride. William grew into a thoughtful teenager who loved literature and announced his intention to become a teacher. Clara's hair began showing threads of silver, and Cole's face gained more lines, but they both remained healthy and active. The ranch continued to prosper, and Clara's medical practice evolved as she focused more on teaching and less on daily treatment, trusting her trained assistants to handle routine cases while she consulted on the difficult ones. On a spring morning in 1899, 17 years after that day when a stubborn cowboy had walked into her clinic, bleeding and refusing help, Clara stood on her porch watching her grandchild play in the yard. James had married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring spread, and their son, named Cole after his grandfather, was 2 years old and utterly fearless. "Grandma, watch!" young Cole shouted, climbing onto a fence rail. "Be careful, sweetheart," Clara called, but she was smiling. The boy had his grandfather's adventurous spirit and his father's stubbornness. He would probably be just fine. Cole Sr. came out to join her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind, just as he had done countless times over the years. "Do you remember when I asked you what you were thinking that day we moved into this house? You have asked me that many times over the years. And I am asking again, what are you thinking, Clara Harrison?" Clara leaned back against her husband, watching their grandson play, hearing Elizabeth in the house discussing a medical case with one of her students, knowing that William was in town teaching school to the next generation of Copper Springs children. "I am thinking that stubborn cowboy who walked into my clinic 17 years ago turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. He probably would not have come at all if his wound was not so bad he had no choice. True, but he did come, and he stayed, and we built all of this together." Clara turned in Cole's arms to face him. "I am thinking that I loved you then, I love you now, and I will love you until my last breath." Cole kissed her, tender and sweet, a kiss that held 17 years of partnership, passion, struggle, and triumph. When they finally pulled apart, he said, "You know what I'm thinking? That I need to thank that fence post for breaking off at just the right angle to send me to your clinic." Clara laughed, the sound bright and joyful. "You are ridiculous. I am in love. It amounts to the same thing." As they stood together watching their grandson play, the ranch spread out before them and their family all around them, Clara knew that her father would have been proud. She had taken the knowledge he gave her and used it to build not just a medical practice, but a whole life. She had healed countless people, raised 3 wonderful children, and loved one stubborn cowboy with everything she had. She had come to the Wild West looking to prove that a woman could be a doctor. She had proven that, and so much more. She had proven that determination, skill, and heart could build something lasting. She had proven that love and partnership could overcome any obstacle. She had proven that sometimes the best medicine was not just what you did with your hands, but what you did with your whole life. And it had all started because one stubborn cowboy finally let her heal him. In a dusty clinic in a small Arizona town on a spring day in 1882. Clara stood on her porch with Cole's arms around her grandchild laughing in the yard, her children building their own lives nearby, and felt perfectly, completely content. This was her legacy. Not just the people she had healed, but the life she had built, the love she had found, the family that would carry on long after she was gone. She had come west alone, but she would never be alone again. She had found her home, her purpose, and her heart, and every bit of it had been worth the journey.